Ready, Brian.
Okay, so I'm gonna share my screen. Hmm, Okay, do you all see it, right?
Yes, I can.
Okay, good afternoon, guys. Our research project is called Telling Stories of Students About the Perception of Peer Assessment in the Academic Writing course. So my group is made by 4 people, including me, and they are Diana Céspedes, uh, Maria Alejandra Lave, Javier Oliveros, and Brian. So that is me. So let's start by defining the problem statement.
Okay, good afternoon, everyone. To start with a briefly background of the phenomenon we are working on, we have to take into account that Universidad Surcolombiana es el acuerdo número 019 de 2020, let's say it in Spanish, for the development of classes. Due to the outbreak of COVID-19 in Colombia, you all know that, which expresses that courses should include more flexible and reflective strategies mediated with technology for the development of classes. This led the academic writing course of the English language teaching program, known as ELT program, at Universidad Surcolombiana to implement an alternative assessment which helps students with their formative summarized development that based on Universidad Surcolombiana, of course. With that in mind, guys, the peer assessment was included in the academic writing course because it is supposed to allow students to enhance their, or let's call it our, to enhance our critical thinking by evaluating someone else's written composition and to give corrective feedback on technological rubrics in order to improve a classmate idea, let's say. On the other hand, it is not enough to base ourselves on what Universidad Surcolombiana says, that the peer assessment is supposed to allow students, but we should also consider what experts like Topin says about it. He states that peer assessment contributes not only to evaluate their value, worth, or quality of a product or outcome, but also to make students have the same status in which learning is retrieved from the interaction with the peer. Or according to Yam, another expert, peer assessment contributes students to be independent, to gain improved performances, and to bestowed with variety of benefits. Having said that, it is our task to study, or let's say investigate, whether what those experts or the Universidad Surcolombiana have said is reflected in our reality as students. And for that, the method that is going to be used to address the phenomenon is really important, guys. So now my classmate Alejandra is going to tell you about it. So go ahead, Alejandra.
Okay, taking into account what Erwin said, and the fact that perception is the way in which the brain interprets the stimulus and context through the senses, we are going to address this study through narrative because we think this is the most suitable method for the purpose of this research, since it is necessary to provide detailed information of a student's understanding of peer assessment to describe and analyze the context in which those perceptions were originated, right? So, in that sense, we want to conduct this research because there is not much information about this aspect and the point of view of the student teachers during their development of major is highly important. So as in this case, the development of writing skills in academic writing course, right? So besides, we are urged to analyze those perceptions because of the new evaluative methodology set by, set by Universidad Surcolombiana that made the academic writing course implement the peer assessment. So for this reason, this study requires a student for academic writing course who have experienced peer assessment during their development of tasks and who are willing to participate in the study by telling us their experiences with this peer assessment, right? So now Diana are going to talk about the objectives of our research.
So now I'm going to read the question, the central question that we have here, that is, what do the students' stories tell us about the perception of peer assessment in the academic writing course? So first of all, we have to know that we pose the central question of our research, taking into account our research methodology, which is the narrative one. And as we know, this one is done through telling stories. So that's why the question is like, that's why we wrote the question in that way. So now, our general purpose with this research is directly linked to our general objective, so which is to analyze students' perception regarding peer assessment in the academic writing course. Now, taking into account that there are no documents focused on the students' perception regarding this phenomenon, we are obliged to carry out a study of it to obtain an answer. So now, in order to achieve our main objective, we must carry out two specific objectives, which are the identification of perceptions and their characterization. In this case, we have two specific objectives, which are to identify the students' perception in the semester 2022 about peer assessment in the academic writing course, and the other one is to characterize the students' perception about peer assessment in connection to the academic writing course. So now, to identify the perception, we must read carefully what was said by each student to get a specific perception of each one of them. Then we proceed to make the comparison between perceptions in order to characterize them, and having as a result a complete analysis of perception, which is the main purpose of our research. So now my partner Brian is going to continue with the next part of our topic.
So now for continuing with the research study, we needed to highlight main concepts that are undertaken or that construct our paper, right? So as you see here in the general objective, you will find four main concepts. They are perception, peer assessment, academic writing, and ELT, right? So ELT is English language teaching, right? So we decided to do it in this way. So we define the concepts by first doing with peer assessment, because it will tell us like how the phenomenon is seen in various studies. Then we use peer assessment in academic writing because it will limit our study, or it will focus our study just for the academic writing. So they will be more specific. Once we have this part that is our phenomenon, we'll do it by defining academic writing in English language teaching. Why? Because academic writing can be in any discipline, such as medicine, engineering, nursery, pedagogy, or any kind, right? So we needed to define academic writing for English language teaching, because this will specify more. And last but not least is perception. As this is the aspect of our research study, so we needed to define what perception is. Therefore, we can have a complete image of those concepts that are going to construct our research study. And here is how we did it. This is the problem statement. What my partners at the beginning said, here is stated as in a written composition. So they explain, but here is like the summary or the composition, the objectives and the question, the literature review, and then we did it like this way. Let me read this paragraph. This study analyzes the perceptions of ELT students towards peer assessment in academic writing course. It is urged to define the key theoretical concepts that support the study. Here we use as constructs of the study the concepts of peer assessment in academic writing in English language teaching, and perception. First, we needed to analyze and describe what peer assessment is because it pictures the phenomenon in broad terms. Second, we specify peer assessment by using a subject of implementation as academic writing, because peer assessment in academic writing will tell the specific techniques carried out for the subject. Third, as academic writing courses can be taught in multiple disciplines, we're limited by defining academic writing for English language teaching, which is the discipline where the context takes place. And finally, but not least, we define perception because it is the aspect required for pursuing the purpose of the study. So as you see here, we are starting by defining peer assessment, then academic writing, we use some theoretical concepts here, then academic writing in ELT, and finally perception. That's all that we have for now.
Okay, thank you. Can you please go to the question? I think that it must say, what do students' stories tell us about their perception? Yeah, that's it. And a matter of suggestion for next time that you present the theoretical framework, it is better that you use a slide in which you can show us what do you want, what is the framework of the theory that you are showing, or that you have chosen, sorry. You understand? I know that the paper is there. However, when you are in a presentation, you are not going to show the paper or what the paper states. What you are going to do is explaining what you have about the three elements or the four elements that you have. In this case, you have peer assessment, academic writing, and perception, and those, and the intersection that is a peer assessment in academic writing. Yeah, those are the concepts, the constructs, and now you have to explain them, right? Remember something, something important is that the theoretical framework is that, a framework, and we as listeners need to say or need to understand what your framework is about. So what is the limit? What are the intersections? What are the theories that you are taking in order to do your paper, your research, right? For example, how do you understand perception? What is perception?
We define it as a process of understanding with our senses. So we took it from psychology and cognitive science. and it is stated that perception is a process of how the individual interacts with the context or the events, right? In that kind of for the subject or the object that he wants to analyze or that he wants to perceive, right?
Okay.
In that process, the person, let me show you something here. Okay, here. The person collects a specific input to gain the understanding or awareness. So this starts by when we like get information from the environment, we select it, we receive it, we organize it, and finally we interpret it to construct a meaningful input of the world, right? So we took it from psychology and cognitive science, and it defined it as a process. And also we define 2 dimensions of this process. One and the other one that is for the physical dimension of perception. What is that? So the psychological dimension refers to things that we cannot touch. For instance, events. Let's call them peer assessment. When you are working with peer assessment, you are not gonna have like something physical, but are the events that are gonna be in the context, and you are gonna experience with your senses, by you seeing, by you listening to something, you reading to something, all that involves your sensory input of the world. And the physical one refers to the objects, things that you can touch. For instance, here we wrote in this case an example. For instance, understanding a dog barking or a flower can be a product of physical dimension of perception, right? When you see a dog barking, it's because you can see it, but you can see the physical animal there. But when you refer like a dog barking, in the psychological dimension can be interpreted as a sign of danger. Or for instance, when you see a flower, you can interpret it as a beautiful present for a lady or a man. You see that this, even though took place in a physical essence, gets to the mind, gets to something abstract. So here we define the 2 dimensions and the process that it needs to be considered, that needs to be considered for psychology and cognitive science.
Yes, Brian, thank you very much for the explanation. I was not saying that you didn't explain it on the paper. I was saying that next time on the presentation, you have to do like something in order to explain us those concepts, because those concepts are very important for us to understand. For example, yes, and they are very appropriate. I really like the way that you describe perception, because now you have a better idea of what you are going to do with the stories. The stories are not going to be only narrations or simple narrations. They have to be very descriptive narrations, right? Because you need to understand the perceptions of the person. So those implications of the theory is going to affect also how you are going to see the phenomena on through the method that you have selected, right? And also is going to affect the results, because in the description later, when you have all the stories and everything, when you describe what you have or what you want to show, you are going to stick to the perception definition that you have, and now you're going to show us what the student teachers in this case are perceiving about the peer assessment, perceiving from the senses, perceiving from their experiences, perceiving from the psychological or the physical dimensions, all those 2 dimensions. So this is a very, very good thing that you have done. I mean, you have done a very good job with this. So congratulations for that. But again, my recommendation is in the slides, try to include a little bit more the explanations, the authors, something like that, right? Just to have an idea. As you explain it briefly from what you have written, you can explain it here more graphically as a presentation. It's just a recommendation for the next ones, okay?
Okay, Professor. Thank you.
Okay, very good. Okay, guys, so now you have, this is the first group. So we are going to have these 2 sessions, definitely, to continue working on the paper, okay? To continue revising things on the paper. So I'm going to open the sessions, the groups, 10 groups, and you are going to go to the rooms now. Right, ready, so you can enter.